Good morning. I'm Kim Ogg, the Harris County District Attorney, and I'm joined by representatives from my office as well as the Harris County Sheriff's Office this morning. We're here to announce an important arrest that occurred last night of Gregory Lueb. Mr. Lueb is the second in command at the Harris County Treasurer's Office and has been charged with felony theft in a financial fraud scheme that compromised Harris County Credit Union bank account. He's charged with stealing money, which he says he paid to a financial dominatrix. The scheme was uncovered by the Harris County Sheriff's Department working with members of our Financial Crimes Division. And John Brewer, the chief prosecutor in that division, will give you more details about that crime. I want to talk to you just a little bit about how this came to our attention and how Mr. Lueb got on our radar. When Harris County changed banks in June of 2017, the Crime Victims Restitution Account, which we maintain control over that money in order to pay crime victims money derived from criminals, we noticed several unauthorized transfers in that bank account. The irregularities were discovered through the due diligence of our financial administrator, Teresa Coronado, who's here today, as well as our chief of staff, Vivian King. Those irregularities were brought to my attention. Other crimes occurred involving the county later in the summer, and eventually our Financial Crimes Division and the Harris County Sheriff's Office merged their investigations. Mr. Lueb was arrested last night on a single charge, and that charge arises from the fraud he perpetrated against the Harris County Federal Credit Union. Mr. Brewer is going to talk to you about that. I want the people of Harris County to know that I've spoken with the commissioners who are the governing body of Harris County and recommended that they take measures immediately to ensure the securance of all taxpayer dollars through an independent audit if that's necessary. Mr. Lueb had access to almost $3 billion. He could move up to $100 million at a time on his signature alone. And he had access to every single Harris County department's bank accounts. And on Tuesday, late in the afternoon, we learned of this scheme involving a woman that he allegedly met online through an S&M website. So clearly, Mr. Lueb is compromised, and because of his immense access, his financial expertise, and the immense access that he had to county dollars, we moved very quickly. Orlando Sanchez was notified Wednesday morning. He moved to terminate Mr. Lueb's employment almost immediately, and we pulled our case together yesterday. He was arrested last night, and he's still in custody. With that, I'm going to invite John Brewer up to just give you a few of the details about the facts of the case with which he's charged today. Mr. Brewer?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Thank you. My name is John Brewer. I'm the Division Chief of the Financial Crimes Division within the Harris County District Attorney's Office. So to kind of give you a chronology or a background as to how this occurred in terms of my division's participation in it, we were investigating an attempted theft from the county. As part of that investigation, which I'm not going to go into in terms of any additional detail, as part of that investigation, we became aware of Mr. Lueb and actually spoke to him regarding that investigation. Very soon thereafter, we were made aware that the Harris County Sheriff's Department had an active investigation involving Mr. Lueb, which ultimately is going to culminate into the charges that you have before you. At that point, we were able to partner with the Harris County Sheriff's Department, and we became an active participant in the investigation that again led up to these charges. At that point, our role in the District Attorney's Office, since we have another police agency with kind of boots on the ground, our role becomes to acquire the records and do the different type of financial analysis necessary to determine what happened. We did that. It takes a while to get financial records. That's a process that we do generally through grand jury subpoenas, and we did that as quickly as we could and gathered as much other background information as we could. When the records came in addition to obviously working very closely with Sergeant McClure at the Harris County Sheriff's Department, one of our prosecutors, Candace Freeman, worked very hard and very closely with him. Our financial analysts looked at the records, and what we saw was a pattern involving a Harris County Federal Credit Union bank account. We saw very clearly a pattern of withdrawals made on the credit established in that account by Mr. Lueb. After the withdrawals were made, then there was a very clear pattern of deposits or payments made towards that account, which freed up additional credit. There was then usually immediately or very quickly thereafter a withdrawal again from that credit card or from that credit union account. And then after the withdrawal was made, we would see in the records, or did see in the records, that there was then a reversal of the payment. And we saw that pattern in the records. Our investigators, our financial analysts, the deputy, the sergeant involved, our investigators noticed that pattern occurring over and over and over again, such that what was a $10,000 credit limit on that account accrued charges in excess of $30,000 basically. Based on that information and a large amount of information obtained again by our investigators and the Harris County Sheriff's Office Sergeant, they looked to speak to Mr. Lueb. Initially they were not successful, but eventually once they were seeking his fingerprints and a DNA sample for purposes of the investigation, they did speak to Mr. Lueb. Mr. Lueb talked to them and gave them essentially admissions that was able to confirm some of the information and some of the conclusions that we had drawn, including some of the information that DA Ogg just gave you regarding the purpose of the money being withdrawn from the bank account, or at least the destination of the money. And Mr. Lueb told investigators, our investigator and Sergeant McClure from the Sheriff's Office, that he was making these withdrawals essentially because he was being blackmailed by a woman from the internet that he met on a website, I believe is collarspace.com. Apparently it's some type of a sadomasochistic website involving something that I don't understand, frankly. So after the information was gathered and after the admissions made by Mr. Lueb, we were in a position at that point to file the charges, which we did, and as DA Ogg said, he was taken into custody last night. So that's how those are the basics of the investigation.
Let's invite Lieutenant Alvarado up to speak for the Harris County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning. Thanks everybody for being here. The case with the Harris County Sheriff's investigation came to light on Wednesday, September 27, 2017. We were notified by the Harris County Federal Credit Union that Mr. Lueb had stolen several amounts of dollars stemming from a credit card abuse case. We started the investigation. It was a lengthy investigation, and Mr. Lueb's MO was basically to make a deposit, withdraw the money, and then stop payment on that deposit. He did that on multiple occasions. At one time he deposited, or he got money transferred to this account for $18,160. He attempted to withdraw the money, but the credit union did not pay that money because he was delinquent on several of his accounts. And our investigation in cooperation with the Harris County investigator David Worley, we're able to get a statement from Mr. Loeb admitting, or basically admitting to some of his involvement in the theft. Right now, he's charged with felony theft for this case with the Harris County Federal Credit Union, and that's basically it. He's still in the Harris County jail as of this morning. I'll take any questions if anybody has any questions.
If we could hold that till the end, could we go ahead and do it in Spanish? We thought instead of breaking down, it makes it really difficult for everybody. If we could do Spanish, if you'd like to start in Spanish, then Mr. Perez will do the other.
Where's our Spanish media? El Departamento de Sheriffs de Harris County aprendió que en septiembre de 2017, el asistente del County Treasurer estaba cometiendo robo sobre cuentas de la Harris County Federal Credit Union. Él depositaba dinero y luego, no dinero, pero cheques. Depositaba cheques y trataba de sacar ese dinero antes que se cambiaran los cheques. Entonces, cuando él sacaba el dinero, él ponía alto a esos cheques. Y con ese sistema estaba robando el dinero de la Harris County Federal Credit Union. Entonces, cuando nosotros aprendimos de eso, comenzamos a hacer la investigación y sobre esta investigación, aparte con District Attorney's Office Investigators, aprendimos que había robado como $440,000 en dinero de la Credit Union. En este caso, le hemos puesto cargos de robo sobre este atento de robar este dinero. Ahorita está en el condado de Harris. Es todo lo que tengo por dentro. Se lo voy a pasar al District Attorney's Office.
Sí.
Buenos días. Me llamo Rubén Pérez, soy fiscal de aquí del condado de Harris. Trabajo por la fiscal del condado de Harris, Kemal. Y estoy aquí, yo soy el jefe del Special Crimes Bureau, que le dice el condado de Harris. Estamos ahora en la mañana a anunciar que detenimos a un acusado que se llama Gregory Lueb, que es el que está segundo en poder de la oficina del tesoro del condado de Harris. Estamos acusándolo que se robó como $30,000 de la Unión del Crédito de Harris County, usando dinero de los empleos del condado de Harris. Este caso fue trabajado por nosotros, los fiscales del condado de Harris, conjuntos con el departamento del sheriff de González y aquí del condado de Harris. La señora, la fiscal del condado de Harris, Kemal, dice que le recomendó a los comisarios del condado de Harris que hagan un oratorio de las cuentas del condado de Harris, porque este hombre que está acusado del robo está comprometido por lo que lo estamos acusando. Estamos acusándolo de que él abrió una cuenta en el condado de la Unión Crédito y que sacaba dinero, los pagaba, sacaba el dinero, y también en ese modo se robó como $30,000 de los empleos del condado de Harris. También anoche fue detenido y dijo que cuando fue detenido que admitió que sí se había robado el dinero, pero lo había robado porque estaba en una situación con una dominicles financiera. No sabemos mucho cómo trabaja eso. Es que dice que una mujer que conoció en el internet le decía que se robara dinero y le mandara el dinero a ella. Decía que esa mujer se llamaba Cindy. No sabemos si Cindy existe, pero es lo que dijo. Dijo que por eso se robó el dinero de los empleos del condado de Harris. Y el caso de que estamos acusando es un robo y el rango de castigo es 2 años de cárcel. Y con eso quiero decir, ese brevemente es lo que estamos acusando al señor Gregory Lueb. ¿Preguntas?
¿El señor tiene una fianza de $1,000?
Es lo que entendimos, una
¿Por
fianza.
qué una fianza tan poca para una persona que ha robado tanto?
Buena pregunta, ¿ok? La fianza que se hizo no es fianza de nosotros, del condado de Harris. No es algo que nosotros como fiscales y representantes hacemos. Ese $1,000 es algo que hacen los jueces, no nosotros, son los jueces. Solo que si quieres saber por qué la fianza es tan mínima, hablen con los jueces, porque nosotros no somos los que recomendamos esa fianza.
And I guess I can ask the DA about that same thing. A lot of people would probably be very surprised that this individual is accused of stealing $35,000 and he ended up with a bond of $1,000.
Well, I'm very surprised. I think you should ask the magistrate who set that bond that very question. Bail is set by judges. Despite our recommendations, bail is the exclusive authority of the judge. So even when we present evidence or request conditions, in this case such as surrender of passport, bail remains under the sole control of judges. So if you have questions or complaints about bail, so do we.
Thank you. I have a question. So what happened to Mistress Cindy? Who is she and what's going to happen to her?
We don't know if the dominatrix exists or not. We've confirmed that there's a website. We certainly are still in the process of gathering some evidence. Some was seized last night during the arrest, but this is an ongoing investigation. And so, you know, the more salacious points are obvious in Mr. Lueb's admissions, but whether they're true or not is really beside the point. We know that he was stealing from Harris County employees because it's our money that is in the credit union. Credit union is self-insured. And so the bank account that he set up was set up for this purpose, it appears. It's not his ordinary personal bank account, as I understand. And it involves fraud, the most common crime, I think, in Harris County, the one that we receive thousands of reports about through the police agencies. But there are very few resources in this county dedicated to those crimes. That's why I'm proud to stand up here with the Sheriff's Department, because I know Sheriff Gonzalez, like me, believe that financial crimes are incredibly important to public safety, and that you can often do as much damage with a pen as you can a knife. And when a person of this rank has this much access and unfettered control over the taxpayer dollars, I think it's as important a case as we've made since I've been elected. So that's why I contacted the commissioners as soon as we really got to the bottom of it, but this is an ongoing investigation.
So I have a question. So do you have any sort of indication that this individual might have worked with somebody else, maybe someone else is involved? You are calling for an audit, so this is just a precaution.
Well, he had access to up to $3 billion. And so, yes, I think a precaution, ringing a warning bell is in order. In terms of who he worked with, it's unclear, but these fraud schemes often involve other people, other crime victims whose identity has been compromised. And the deposits that were made into his federal credit union account were really fraudulent checks and transfers written from other victims' accounts. Who deposited them is not, I can't disclose it at this time, but certainly there are prospectively other suspects. There's no indication, of course, that there's anybody else who works for the county involved.
Was this last part of the press release we're talking about, where these victims had their identities compromised? Were these people who were involved in the county victim?
No, no. The people whose identities were compromised and checks or withdrawals made from their bank accounts didn't end up losing the money. The credit union did, because the money had been paid to Lueb. He had withdrawn the money. And then when the credit union received notice of the fraud from the real victims' banks, then they, of course, reversed the charges and were trying to collect from Lueb. But Lueb was involved in a scheme that's pretty common. We've seen it repeatedly. We've seen other compromises in the county and at other governmental entities. And it's a very common and, I think, major threat to public safety. It's our tax dollars at stake and people's individual monies.
But the victims themselves were called from a list of people who were previous crime victims? You said something about...
No, we don't know who all the victims are. We know that... Well, that's not true. I guess it's true we don't know who all the victims are. But in this case, the victims whose bank accounts were compromised did not give Mr. Lueb permission to withdraw money. They didn't even know Mr. Lueb. And there's an attempted theft that was also brought to our attention using the same account. But that's part of an ongoing investigation. I don't want to get into the details behind it.
So this could be an organized crime that probably includes other people from other states, other...
I don't want to speculate. I know that we've got Lueb, and that's what's important to us. But pulling in all the other responsible parties, yes, very important, just not as important as stopping his access.
I apologize if my earlier questions weren't clear enough, but you mentioned the crime victims restitution account.
Yes.
That's sort of how it all began. Did the
That money was...
identity theft come from previous crime victims?
That's a good question. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. Lueb came on our radar because Ms. Coronado, our financial administrator at that time, and our chief of staff noticed that money was being withdrawn at the time of the transfer, money that we didn't authorize, money that was not going to legitimate crime victims. We were able to stop those transfers because through their due diligence, they look at the bank accounts that we have control over daily. That's how we caught it. And so we prevented any theft, but he was brought to my attention because of that suspicious behavior. Then around the time of the hurricane, there were other county compromises. And this was swirling around the county auditor and treasurer's office. That seemed to be the common denominator. So when the Financial Crimes Division of the Special Crimes Bureau was asked to look into Lueb, they discovered the Sheriff's Department investigation, which had stemmed from the credit union theft, which we didn't know about until then. So the investigations merged, and Lueb avoided interviewing or giving his DNA or fingerprints until the Sheriff's Department got a warrant. So it went down to the wire. And then when he showed up and they interviewed him, he made these admissions of guilt that he had taken the money. He just gave a fairly lurid reason as to why. But this is classic public corruption. It comes in many forms, but it involves great access by people in power. And I think it's really important that taxpayers know that we're looking after their money when there's reports of theft, that they are being investigated by our office and by the Sheriff's Department and by HPD. I know that our law enforcement leaders understand and believe in the importance of prosecuting financial crimes. It's just in these times, there's many draws upon our resources. So I'm just particularly proud of this group because I believe that it was important that the county learn about this big gap in security and that they fix it.
Do you foresee recommendations and changes being made to that county treasurer position to disallow that type of access, or do you feel like the checks and balances you had in place?
Oh, I think that's a question for the legislative branch and for others in county government to answer. At this time, I'm satisfied to tackle this job. That's plenty.
How common is that for one person, one signature, to have that kind of access? Is that all the accounts like that?
I'm unaware I was unaware that anyone in the county had that kind of unfettered financial access and authority, and I think it raises questions about current practices in those offices. I know that Lueb also came to the attention of the Harris County Auditor's Office during one of their audits for currency swapping, and that has been the subject of some controversy over in County Commissioner's Court.
And to be clear, we don't know if there was a dominatrix involved. That was just what he said.
That's what Mr. Lueb said. You know, it's to me, it takes away from the real story, which is victimizing people financially through a myriad of schemes, and especially public employees. It's very contemptuous. It's very blatant behavior, criminal behavior. So, you know, Mr. Lueb's story about an S&M website and a financial dominatrix, seriously, it's news to us. But we follow the evidence where it takes us, and that site exists. And I think to learn more about the details of that kind of predilection, you'll have to do your research.
Had he shown financial gain? Had he paid off credit cards, a big loan, anything like that?
He was paying off something. He was withdrawing cash. He says it was for this blackmail scheme. Perhaps it was.
And in this blackmail scheme, is he saying that this alleged dominatrix was essentially saying, hey, pay me or else I'm going to out you, or what was...
I think in the probable cause statement you'll find a better recitation of his admissions than I could give you. It's third-hand hearsay at this point, but I assure you that that evidence will be used against him, and it will be presented in court as part of this case, and Lord knows what other cases. It's an ongoing investigation.
And you touched on this a little bit. What are some of the next steps in that criminal investigation?
Well, we're encouraging every county department to take a good, hard look at their accounts, see if there's unauthorized payments, missing money. I've contacted all the commissioners, or attempted to contact all the commissioners. Obviously, I contacted the county treasurer as soon as I knew. And so I think we've done what we can do at this point. We'll continue on with the criminal investigation and let county government tend to their business.
Obviously, the credit bureau has been notified. Are they looking back at their records as well?
You'd have to talk to somebody from the credit union. I know that the credit union is diligent. I've banked there myself for almost 30 years, and I know that they often send out warnings about fraud. I've seen them myself just as a user, but they caught these. Now, you know, at what point I can't tell you, but I know that they reported it at the 30. I'm glad that the loss was only $35,000. He's charged with under 30 because we have clear evidence of the state jail amount. Everything can change depending on what the rest of the investigation reveals. But we thought it was important to get him off the streets, ask him to surrender his passport, and go ahead and start with this case, letting everybody, really sounding the alarm bell for all county government. Thank you all very much.